Wouldn't it be funny if I go on a date in the future and they use my own tips against me? That'd be embarrassing. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is JC and I usually make videos about me doing random activities, being a ham, and giving my silly commentary on it. But every now and then, I give you guys some actually useful advice, like today. So in today's video, I'm gonna be giving you 5 unique conversation starters to use on a first date that will hopefully get you a second date, if not carry on the conversation beyond your first date. These 5 conversation starters are for men, women, everybody in between. They can be for dating, talking to family, making new friends, anything. It just shows that you're a very creative and fun person, so use them to your advantage. So I've been told many, many times that I'm really good at asking questions, I'm really good at talking to people and having conversations. I attribute that to the fact that I have a background in journalism and interviewing is kind of second nature to me. So I love talking to people, I love getting their perspectives on life, and that translates into dating because it makes me really easy to talk to and really good at keeping the conversation going and headed into more of a unique and unconventional way, but in a way that's really fun, lighthearted, and different than all your other first date conversations. So before I give you those 5 topics, first I wanted to go over 4 tips to help you get the most out of these questions. Tip number 1 is try to flow into these questions as best as you can. So that's probably the trickiest part about asking some more offhanded questions, because it's like, how do you even bring them up? You definitely don't want to go into a date with a set list of questions and then asking them out of the blue, because that's going to feel kind of like an interrogation and kind of like you were over-prepared and not that natural. So here's what you're gonna do. If the conversation's starting to die a little bit and that topic is kind of getting a little dry, you're just gonna stop everything and inquisitively, that's the key, you gotta do this inquisitively. You gotta go, let me ask you this. And then you ask the question. You have to say it with that inflection though, because if you just say like,
Yeah. So, what do you like to do in your free time?
that's boring, okay? That's so vague, it's not as fun as exciting. But if you do it inquisitively and make it sound more of a spontaneous question that just came to mind, that's gonna present you as a more lighthearted, fun, and kind of random personality, which is really what we're looking for in a partner and in a date, is just to have fun. The second tip I have for you is have your own answer prepared. You cannot expect somebody to pour their heart out or answer this really random question without you having your own answer prepared. This tip is also really important because I actually need this tip for myself. It's important to have your own answer so that way you can give your own answer. So my biggest pet peeve when it comes to dating is if I'm just sitting there interviewing them the entire time and they don't ask me a single question about myself, not even how about you? You know, asking the question back. If you haven't seen my Bumble dating story time, my first one, where that was just already such a deal breaker, as if that date wasn't already a mess, that goes to show that I really hate it when people do that. But it's also my fault because it just means I'm sitting there asking them questions and interviewing them and not giving my own perspective. So have your own answer prepared and give your own answer, because it just creates a more fun environment. Tip number 3. You're gonna respond to their answer in one of 3 ways. The first way is positively. So you're either gonna agree with them, or maybe you share the same perspective and you can kind of bond over that and talk a little bit more about your own experiences. The second way is if you know nothing about it, you're gonna ask them more questions. So just follow up, ask them a little bit more detail and get more information about their answer. The third way, and hear me out, is you're gonna respond negatively. And what I mean by that is you're just gonna roast the absolute shit out of them. And what I mean by that is teasing on a first date is totally fine. It shows that you're playful, it creates a little bit of sexual tension, but it also shows that you're just not gonna blindly follow and agree with what they say just to make you seem agreeable, you know? You wanna have your own opinion and you wanna tease them for their opinions. It creates a fun dynamic and just makes you seem a lot more lighthearted. Lastly, the 4th tip that I have is that every single one of these questions should have some type of follow-up conversation or even translate into another date. So I'll give those on a case-by-case basis, but you really want to use these questions to your advantage and bring them up another time so that you always have something to talk about. So without babbling, let me get into the 5 conversation starters to use on a first date. The first conversation starter I have is, what is the best concert you've ever been to? So I don't know about you guys, but I cannot stand when somebody asks me, so what kind of music do you listen to? It's like all of a sudden you just start reflecting on every single song you've ever heard and you're like, I don't know how to categorize it. Like, I like Celine Dion and Lil Wayne, but that doesn't mean that's the kind of music I listen to. You know, it's so vague. I feel like nowadays everybody has such a diverse portfolio of the artists and genres that they listen to that asking that is just so boring, basic, and vague. But if you ask what is the best concert you've been to, it really forces them to call upon a very specific memory and event, and it allows them to give you a better sense of their overall music taste without trying to think about, I don't even know how to answer that question. So what I like about this question is that it draws upon a very specific event that happened to them and probably gets them really excited. You know, concerts are really fun, and so they're gonna have a lot of excitement telling you about it. So here's how you're gonna respond. If they have never been to a concert, boom, just start roasting them. You've never been to a concert? Well, who would you want to see in concert? Where would you go to see them in concert? And you can shift the conversation towards your musical tastes. And then you can obviously answer what concerts you've been to, the best ones you have, so that way you get a better sense of your musical preferences. If they have been to a concert of somebody that you both enjoy, then there's your shared response. You can talk a little bit more about that, ask them about the concert, and then get a little bit more of a sense of, hey, we're kind of into the same music, maybe we're into the same movies, or maybe we're into the same sports, and move the conversation that way. And then if they say something that you're like, ew, gross, roast them. So I remember I was once on a date with a guy who said his favorite concert was Blake Shelton. And I was like, oh, you like country music? Like, oh, I didn't know you were uncool, you know? And it forces them to defend themselves a little bit and kind of be like, no, it's really good, I promise. So how you're gonna use this after the date is when you're texting and you're saying, hey, I had such a great time, like, thanks so much. You're gonna tell them, hey, send me your favorite Blake Shelton song so I can really judge your musical taste. Or if you both agreed on something, be like, hey, maybe for our next date, we could go see them in concert, which of course would be post-Rona and if you guys had a really good connection. Or on a more simplistic platform, you could be like, hey, for our next date, let's go on a picnic and we can play their new album, sort of thing. So there's really a lot you can do by sharing or learning about their musical preferences and using it to start a new conversation, learn more about it, and take it towards your next date. The second question to ask on a date is, what is the craziest thing you've ever eaten? So similar to what music do you listen to, I hate it when somebody's like, so what kind of food do you like? It's like, I don't know, I like dino nuggies and sushi. You know, I don't know how do you want me to answer this? I hate mushrooms. You know, it's like, it's so vague and it doesn't really tell you a lot about a person. Whereas I feel like if you ask what's the craziest thing you've ever eaten, again, you're drawing upon a very specific experience and a time in their life where they were adventurous. And a lot of people like to show that they're adventurous and fun when you're dating. I also really like this question because more often than not, it directly relates to traveling. So oftentimes they'll be like, oh, I went to Puerto Rico and I tried pig intestines for the first time. That's a very easy segue into, oh, you went to Puerto Rico? What were you there for? Where's the furthest place you've traveled? Where would you like to travel to? It's a very easy shift into the next conversation about traveling as well. You can also respond to this where if they've said, oh, it was at this restaurant down the street, you know, I went to Korean barbecue and tried frog legs. That's another easy segue to be like, oh, that's crazy. Like, tell me more about the restaurant. How long have you lived in this city, sort of thing. And then you could tell them about your own experiences in restaurants you both may like or you might want to go to in the future. Similarly, if they say they haven't tried anything exotic and ketchup is too spicy for them, roast them, tease them, tell them that they're not that fun, and then almost make it a challenge for them to prove to you that they are fun. So how you're gonna follow up with this conversation starter. So later on, when you're trying to set up a second date, you can say, hey, I was thinking about how you tried those frog legs at Korean barbecue. It was making me crave Korean barbecue. We should go next time. Or you could say, oh my gosh, you told me you've never even had sushi. We need to go. What are you doing on Saturday? Additionally, hopefully based on their answer, you learned a little bit more about their food preferences in general. So if they're vegan or something where they haven't even tried food, you can be like, hey, I've never even had vegan food. You should cook something for me. What are you doing this weekend? There's really a lot you can do to relate that question back to them when you're talking to them and use it to secure that second date. Fun fact about me is I'll eat absolutely anything. Like, don't even tell me what it is. I'll eat it and enjoy it. And then if you tell me it's pig brain, I'll be like, not bad, not bad. Question number 3. I bet I could guess what you were like in high school. So I didn't phrase it as a question, but you could phrase it as a question. But here's how I like to use this question. When your date starts telling you a little bit about themselves, you're learning all of the basics, you know, maybe like where they currently live, what they do for work, that sort of thing. So once you get a little bit more of a feel for them, you're gonna go, I bet you were really cool in high school. I bet you were the jock and you had all of the girls, but you got really bad grades. You're just gonna make some random offhanded guess. Or you're gonna be like, you know what? You seem like a tough guy, but I bet you had a soft side. I bet in high school, let me guess how you were in high school. I bet you were in the school choir and you were the teacher's pet and got straight A's and you don't want anybody to know that. So what's inevitably gonna happen is your date is going to defend themselves. They're probably gonna laugh because they haven't thought about what they were like in high school in so long. So they're probably gonna say something like, haha, actually it's funny, in high school I was a total nerd, I did get straight A's, and I went off to a really good college sort of thing. Or they might be like, ooh, actually I was the troublemaker in high school, you know, I got suspended twice, I got into a lot of fights, that sort of thing. So they're gonna draw upon their past. Here's what I like about this question. You start to learn a little bit more about their background without directly asking, so where are you from? Like, what are you like? But you learn a little bit more about what their interests and hobbies used to be and what their personality, at least inherently, probably is. So more often than not, that person will be like, actually in high school, I was in cheerleading or I was in football. Then you can ask more follow-up questions about that. Oh, you like football? Do you still play? Do you miss it? Who's your favorite team? If it was cheerleading, it'd be like, oh my gosh, that sounds so fun. Do you still work out? Do you still exercise? Something like that. If it's more hobby-based or more artistic, you can follow up with that. I was in choir. Wow, do you still sing? Do you play an instrument? Or I was an artist. I was really into art. Do you paint? What do you do now? How can you monetize that? There's a lot of different ways this can go. And worst case scenario, if they're giving you nothing to work with, use it to ask questions about their background. Where did you go to high school? Where did you grow up? Did you have brothers and sisters? You could even ask what kind of car they drove in high school. There's a lot of different ways this conversation can go, but it's also just really funny to reflect on the person that you used to be. Like when I was in high school, I was a totally different person back then than I am now, so it's funny to laugh at and funny to look back on. Now here's what I want you to do if you talk about this question. Is you're gonna talk about how you were in high school. Hopefully it's a little embarrassing. Hopefully you've glowed up since then. But when your guys are talking later, I want you to reference it again. And here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna say, oh my gosh, I just found a really embarrassing photo of me from high school. They're gonna be like, haha, oh my God, let me see it. You hold that photo for ransom for a second date. Be like, oh my gosh, I'll show it to you on our second date. What are you doing this Saturday? Or if you want to see it, you're going to have to go out with coffee with me. You know, use it to your advantage because they don't really care about seeing the photo, but it's just, again, the playfulness and the lightheartedness that they're going to be attracted to. So use that to secure a second date, but to also have a reason to go back into your old Facebook albums and MySpace albums to find those really embarrassing photos. The fourth question I have is, what has been your least favorite job? So what I like about this question is that on a date, you're gonna be talking about what you do for a living. It's kind of inevitable because it's like what you're doing most of the day anyway. But that's just like spewing out basic information. It doesn't really tell you more about them. So once they get done telling you about what they do, I want you to stop them and be like, all right, what's been your least favorite job? It kind of makes them perk up a little bit and think, well, yeah, and then they give you a history of maybe some of the jobs they've been in. So what usually happens is that they're caught off guard and they're like, oh, I haven't actually thought about that in a while. You know, when I was 16, I used to be a server and I hated it. Or I used to be a barista, or I used to mow lawns. Either way, they're calling upon a very specific memory that they probably haven't thought about in a while, but it's just kind of like another fun topic to talk about, and you get to vent a little bit. So here's how you respond. If they have a job that they used to do that maybe you also did, commiserate about that. Talk about your serving nightmare stories, or talk about how you used to babysit and the kids were crazy sort of thing. If he gives you a boring answer or like, oh, I haven't disliked any of my jobs, then you can start talking about the future. Well, what do you see for your future jobs? Where do you see your career going? What would your dream job be? And then kind of move it into more of a positive aspect. Or you can even ask, if you could do anything in the world or have one skill and get paid for it, what would it be? Move the conversation that way. So how you're gonna use this for a follow-up is you're gonna relate it to your next date. So one time I was dating somebody and I told them that I used to work at a little brunch restaurant, and I texted them and I said, you know, I think I might still know people that work there, but I haven't been there in years. You wanna go for breakfast and see if I can score us a free meal? And it's kind of just like a fun, easy way to get a second date. Or again, kind of similarly like what I was saying before, like, oh, remember how you said you used to work in an Italian food restaurant? I've been craving some ravioli. We should go sometime. Relate it back to what they said they had, tease them about it and be like, you want to relive the nightmare? Maybe it might be better this time with me, sort of thing, and try to use it to your advantage in scoring that second date. The fifth and final conversation topics is one of my favorites because it's so random, but it's so good. So it is, what has been your best Halloween costume? So if you're watching this close to my upload date, which would be early November, Halloween was just last week. So this would be a very easy segue into the conversation because you could easily be like, yeah, did you do anything fun for Halloween? Did you get dressed up? Did you go to a party? Which hopefully not, because we should still be social distancing. But that would be an easy way to get into this topic. However, how I usually like to get into this topic of conversation is you're kind of starting to learn a little bit more about them, and I want you to pick a word and use it to kind of give them a compliment and relate it back to the Halloween costumes. Here's what I mean by that. You could be like, you seem like a really creative guy. Let me ask you this, what's been your best Halloween costume? Or it could be like, you seem like you're the life of the party. What's been your best Halloween costume? You kind of want to lead with a compliment, but also force them to prove what you're saying. So again, I'm using this word a lot, but it shows that you're playful, lighthearted, and adventurous. Now here's how you respond to some of the ways they may answer. They may take a moment, sit back and be like, oh geez, I haven't thought about it. I mean, I guess when I was 5 years old, I guess when I was younger, I dressed up as Woody from Toy Story, sort of thing. Then again, you can ask a little bit more about siblings, their background. Do you like Toy Story? What kind of movies do you like? If it's something random, like, haha, actually it was really funny, I dressed up as a banana and all my friends dressed up as monkeys and chased me around the whole party, then you can ask a little bit more about that. What friends were they? Are they college friends? Do you still talk to them? Or if they don't even have a good costume, again, roast them. You roast them and you say, dang, I thought you were cool, you haven't done anything. Well, what would you be for next Halloween? I could see you being a superhero. And then you start talking about superhero movies or being like, what? You didn't even throw on a jersey? Come on, who's your favorite sports team? Or you could easily be as simple as, really? You didn't just paint your nose as your favorite animal? What's your favorite animal? And they're gonna be like, oh, I don't know, I guess a dog. Oh, do you have dogs? What kind of dogs do you have? Have you always grown up with dogs? This conversation starter is really easy to segue out into other topics based on what they say. Then, of course, you want to have your own response. Now, again, a little bit of homework for you. I want you to pick a really good costume. And similar to the high school one, I want you to have a photo of it ready. So that when you're talking later, you can be like, I found that really embarrassing photo when I dressed up as a cactus, did my homemade costume. It's so funny. They're going to want to see it. You hold it for hostage to get the second date. Or similarly, you got to be like, oh my God, us talking about Halloween on our date made me crave some pumpkin pie. You want to go get dessert on Saturday? Use that conversation as a segue to land a second date. You can do this with anything you guys talk about. Relate it back to what you talked about in a way that makes sense to go on another date with your date. A date with your date? That makes no sense. So those were just 5 random conversation starters to use on your first date to continue the conversation and hopefully land a second date. I have a million more of these tips and ways to use them. So if you guys are interested, definitely let me know below. I can do a part 2 and help you guys, talk to people better and, date. And again, it's not just for dating, it's for making new friends, talking to family, anything. It just shows that you're a lively person, that you got a lot going on up there, and it just makes people enjoy your company more because it's not the typical boring conversations. But thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe so you can join me again for either more dating tips, more bad date horror stories, which are awful but hilarious, or if you want to see me doing some more random activities where I'm just being a total ham because I like hanging out with you guys. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Toodles! Or I can do like a whole video on like pickup lines to use on Bumble. Like, are you a beaver? 'Cause damn! Don't use that one. That's the only one I know.